You're listening to the J.D. Rucker Show. Let's begin. Good afternoon, my friends, my family, the WBR Army, the growing, and I appreciate you all for this, the growing Rucker crew. We are really making some headway. We're really starting to kill it. Please, if you are new to the show, or if you're old to the show, doesn't matter if you're new or old, I guess, get those thumbs up going. We really want to make an impact and start to move up in the Rumble ranks, not for any other reason, not out of some odd sense of pride or competition. It's all about making sure that we get the right message out. And there's so many bad messages out there right now, even in conservative media. A lot of it's great. Obviously, Wendy Bell is fabulous, but we do have many on the right, the so-called right, that are promoting this concept of just Eeyore style doom and gloom, Chicken Littles out there saying Trump's done. You know, this is bad. America's toast and whatever, and it bugs me. So, and especially after last week I did start going down some dark paths, and I thought this week we're going to obviously tell the truth. We're not going to give you the rosy picture for no reason, but it's not bad. Things are looking good. Things are looking great here in the United States of America. Maybe it took some World Cup action, which I don't watch the World Cup, but at least I get to see the responses from these people visiting the United States for the first time, and they're like, "Oh my goodness gracious!" I have no idea what accent that was, but and they didn't actually ever say "goodness gracious," but you get the idea. I mean, they're just loving on us, right? So let's get the love going. Get some love going for the rumbles. Rumble up. Get some rumbles going. Got a big show today. I've got an article over at jdrucker.com that really breaks down a good chunk of it. You know, we get to hear about, oh, this is bad, and this is bad, and this is bad, and Trump messed up here, and Trump messed up there. But I think a lot of people are forgetting all the amazing things that have already happened in the first 18 months of his presidency. We're sort of fixated a bit on the negatives. Look, I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. The Iran situation, even though it looks like it's getting much better, it's still currently a negative. You know, until we have everything in place, until we can look over there and either see Iran is abiding by what they're required to do, or they're not and they're getting bombed one way or the other. We want to see something in this interim period of not sure what's going to happen. Are they going to let us in? What are the new rules? What are the new guidelines? What are the new goals? Did we win? Did we not win? There was a poll that showed like 80% of Americans, almost 80% of Americans want the war to end immediately. But the vast majority of those people do not think that we came out on top. And I think that's quite hilarious, personally, because and the example that I used, and we'll talk about this here in a minute, but the example I used was that it's sort of like the Black Knight in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. If anybody, first of all, if you haven't seen it and you're okay with the most ludicrous movie of all time, then yeah, you should watch it. It really legitimately is the most ludicrous movie ever made. And it's hilarious at times. Sometimes it's just ludicrous, and even then it's kind of hilarious. But the most ludicrous scene of the most ludicrous movie of all time pertains to the Black Knight. And he's there, and you know, he's blocking the way of King Arthur, and he gets into a fight, and King Arthur chops his arm off. And the Black Knight's like, oh, keeps fighting, and then he chops his other arm off, and then he chops his leg off, and he chops his other leg off. And then, you know, at the end, he's sitting there. He's just a stub of a man. He's got no limbs, and he got no weapons. And he's like, "Come back here, you yellow! I'll bite your legs off." That's sort of Iran right now. Okay, I get it. They're gonna rattle their sabers no matter what. But to think, oh my gosh, you know, they came out on top. I'm like, what? What are you guys saying? You know, just because President Trump and J.D. Vance and the team didn't go out there and say, okay, you know, the terms of the agreement are you all must die. It's like, that's, I think, the only thing that would have satisfied a lot of these people. And it's funny because it's coming from both sides, right? It's not just the Mark Levins of the world or the Ben Shapiro's of the world that are saying we got to keep going. It's even many on the woke right that are like, this is a very terrible deal, and Iran is victorious, and they came out that this war has been such a benefit to them. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you guys idiots? Is everybody going crazy? And the answer to that question is the answer that I think we need to hear throughout today's show, which is no, not everybody's going crazy. As a matter of fact, we need to stop listening to the people that keep saying that things are so bad, because your average American doesn't think that. They might be, obviously, we don't like the gas prices where they are, even though they're going down. We don't like the food prices where they are. We don't like affordability the way it is. We don't like this. We don't like that. But compared to what we've experienced in the very recent past, compared to the America that we were being presented under a President Kamala Harris or an eventual President Gavin Newsom or whatever, Vice President Hunter Biden. I mean, really, you really think that things are so bad? Your average American does not. Now, we might sit here and we get hyper. You, me, the people that are more politically minded. We spend our days listening to shows and reading articles and checking out, what's happening, what's the latest from Marco Rubio. What did Tulsi Gabbard say anything new? And maybe we might be sitting there thinking, well, there's a lot of negativity towards President Trump, a lot of negativity towards this Iran deal, a lot of negativity towards the economy. But your average American, and I'm not just talking about Republicans, I'm saying your average American who's sitting there just, what? Yeah, I mean, the Iran war sucks. Glad it's about to be over, and let's just move on. Let's focus on things at home, and they're okay with it. And a lot of people are like, oh, but you look at the polls, the favorability. President Trump's favorability is at 40%. Some polls have him at 39%. It's like, yeah, I mean, that's understandable. We are coming off of a war, an unpopular war at that, a war that's been dividing us. And we have a whole lot of talking heads out there trying to divide us. But we don't have to be divided. We don't. We can look at the facts and come to the same conclusion that the less politically minded people have already come to, that it's not so bad. And when you say, oh, the favorability of 39%, okay, well, Joe Biden hit like 29% at one point, okay? Even the everybody loved Obama. Obama at his low point was at like 38%. So it's not. Yes, does President Trump facing his lowest percentages of some polling? And I think anybody who's ever watched my show before, how I feel about polls. Not exactly my favorite thing. They're so manipulated. But even if you take them at face value, it's really not that bad. And it's going to get better. We've got several months left before the midterms. We can turn this around. We are in the process of turning it around. And again, it's not even for your average Joe. Your average Joe voter out there who maybe occasionally watches Fox News or Newsmax or CNN or whatever, they're not sitting there just wringing their hands. Oh my gosh, I wonder if Moshe Tabei Khamenei is. I wonder how many limbs he has left. They don't care. They don't care. And we know that they don't care because we see legacy media doing this thing that, frankly, I'll go ahead and start off with one knock against President Trump. They have been baiting him with something they knew would work, and it's working. They're baiting him with the reflection pool. Now, here's the thing. There's nobody, not a single human being on this planet who really cares about the reflection pool. By golly, if you were listening to legacy media, they're doing studies about algae, and they're doing tests. They're going out there, they're taking the water, and they're getting a team of scientists together, and they're like, oh my gosh, President Trump, this is such a bad thing for President Trump. And unfortunately, President Trump, he loves beauty, he loves aesthetics, he wants the pool to be beautiful. And for better or for worse, to me, I don't care. It could be purple. It could be empty. I don't care. Is it an important part of American history? Whatever, fine, great. But is it worth talking about? No. As a matter of fact, I'm disappointed that I'm having to talk about it. But you know that the fact that they're talking about it is just a way to say, hey, let's look at this and not look at the fact that we're over there getting Iran to accept what President Obama was never able to do, which was to accept actual inspectors of their nuclear facilities, as President Trump is now calling it nuclear honesty. Now, look, if Iran were to legitimately actually want nuclear power plants and not nuclear weapons, if there was a way to make absolutely sure that they couldn't get nuclear weapons, I'm okay with them having nuclear power plants. As a matter of fact, I think every country should have nuclear power plants. I think that nuclear power is the best power out there. It's clean. It's the greenest of the green. It's far greener than solar or wind or anything like that. So, of course, yeah, nuclear power is great. Let's have more of it. But I just don't trust that that's what Iran would ever do. They would never relegate themselves to just nuclear power. But hey, it's a start. It's a starting point. And as I said, if you missed my show last week, as I said, I believe that this is an offer that they can't refuse. I think we're playing the Godfather here. I think that President Trump knows that they're probably going to not take the deal, not honor the deal. They'll take the deal. They'll take money. But they're not going to honor the deal, and he's eventually going to have to put them down, like Mo Green, okay, like Talia. He's eventually going to have to take them out. But in the meantime, if there's a chance, even if it's just a 10 or 20% chance, they might say, you know what, I guess this is what we got to do. Our economy is wrecked. Our military is gone. We can't really expect to be able to do anything with the nuclear dust while we've got inspectors that are being forced upon us. Let's just wait a generation or at least a decade before we start getting evil again. And if this buys a decade or a generation of Iran not being absolute just terrors of the world, I think it's okay. And again, I think there's a 10 or 20% chance that could happen. But you've got to make the offer. You've got to give them the chance to shoot themselves in the foot. Otherwise, we're the bad guys. If we give them this offer, which we are, and they take it, and then they back out of it, or they start doing stuff or blowing stuff up, okay. Well, now we've got justification. Now we can go after them. Now the world can't say, oh, you guys, you imperialists. Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. So yeah, today's show is going to be focused on highlighting what I think a lot of us have forgotten. Before we get to that, I do want to, here's something that really just, I don't know, at first I was like, wow, that seems sort of weird. And then I thought, okay, maybe it's not so bad. I started reading more into it, and I watched the last 3 or so minutes of this guy, and I thought, okay, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Talking about this guy, Pastor Matt Olson, okay? He did a sermon. He preached about the entire Bible, Genesis to Revelation. And he did so for 96 straight hours. He went through the whole thing. And he made it through almost, it was like 95 hours, 48 minutes or something like that. Still, I mean, that's insane. That's absolutely insane. I thought, oh, it's got to be a publicity stunt. There's got to be this, that. And maybe it was. I don't know the guy's heart. I don't know the guy's theology. I didn't listen to all 96 hours. I didn't listen to more than 3 minutes of it. But it was nice to hear about. And after thinking about it more, I started thinking, you know what, give the guy, don't just assume, Rucker, don't assume that this is some publicity stunt. And oh, he's just trying to get in the record books. Well, no, technically he's not. Is it a record? You betcha. It's definitely a record. But he was unwilling to pay to have it monitored. He did not want the Guinness records or whoever to come and check it out. He just did it. So maybe there were reasons that I don't want to know about or I don't want to talk about. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because that's awesome. I mean, 96 hours? Preaching the Bible? I mean, at the very least, give him kudos.
From Genesis to Revelation, Jesus Christ is Lord. He will increase, and I must decrease. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you that in this moment, I get to do the thing that I really love the most. I get to talk about Jesus. And so let me set the stage of where we're at today. I have taken the past 96 hours, 95 and a half, I guess, to walk from Genesis and to bring you to Revelation, to show you that every book, all 66, written over 1,500 years by over 40 different authors in 3 different languages on 3 different continents, shared one message. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And it is culminated in the book of Revelation. And I know
You guys get the idea. You can always go check out the final 3 minutes or so of his sermon. Again, I think we have that posted over at probably jdrucker.com. We've got a lot of sites, but I think that's probably the place where it is most likely at. And if it's not there, then there'll be a link there that you can always click. That's where I put everything. And I do strongly recommend, look, this is the better than Drudge, okay? Better than any of those other sites out there. I work with multiple news aggregators. This is the only one that's actually mine, jdrucker.com. So please check it out. As it says down there, the best curator of the truth. I'm claiming that title. Well, I wasn't the one that said it, by the way. There was someone out there who it'll be coming out next week, but somebody out there had nominated me for that particular position, whatever you want to call that. Yay, good stuff there. But we are under attack. We, as in Christians, and that's why when people like Pastor Matt Olson pull stunts like this, I think it's good. Anything to get focus on the Bible, right? But it's not just here in the United States. As a matter of fact, I would say we've got it pretty easy compared to others out there. Now, there's this group, this British group that I've been following. They're in my X feed, and most of their stuff is pretty generic. But this particular one highlighted the challenges that they're having elsewhere, challenges across the world. Our biggest problem sometimes as Christians in America is that, oh my gosh, we gotta really fight to be able to say Christmas. So we got to get people to say Merry Christmas. We got to get those Starbucks cups. Well, in other countries, they're fighting to survive.
Did you know that in 2025, 380 million people were persecuted because of our faith? This works out as roughly 1 in 7 Christians across the globe facing extreme persecution, with sub-Saharan Africa being the epicenter of violence against our Christian brothers and sisters. Open Doors UK, an organisation that supports persecuted Christians worldwide, reported that 4,476 people were murdered in 2024 for being Christian. Of this figure, 70% were Nigerian. In fact, Open Doors UK estimates that the following numbers of Christians murdered for their faith was 4,998 in 2024, 5,621 in 2023, 5,898 in 2022, and 4,761 in 2021. In the report, Open Doors UK makes several recommendations, including special envoys for religious freedom, who will directly monitor hostilities and integrate protections into trade and bilateral agreements, emergency relief and reconstruction to help rebuild bombed churches, provide food, medicines, and housing. Let us stand in solidarity with our persecuted brothers and sisters and pray for global peace.
And even though those numbers are, of course, astounding, I would argue that they're definitely low compared to, there's no way to track that all of the people that were killed because of their faith. And to be clear, it's not just about Christians, but that's my focus. So, yeah, I'm going to be tracking and monitoring and seeing what can be done for people who are being persecuted for their Christian faith. This is something that is a rising problem. I know, well, the numbers went down from 2022, and then, but again, those numbers are very small compared to the reality. They can't track every individual that, oh, this person is killed in India because they're Christian. It will go down as just a murder or an accident or something like that. We know that there's a lot more persecution than we can even put into a statistic, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's 500 or 5,000 or 50,000 or more. It's got to stop. And that's something that we're going to be trying to do. I have a Substack, blessed.report, blessed.report, that we're going to be tracking a lot more of this stuff on a regular basis. I've been putting more sermon-like stuff there, Bible study, which is good, and I'm not going to stop that, but we are going to focus a lot more on the numbers. All right, so that was my pregame. Okay, that's ahead of talking about President Trump's many accomplishments. Of course, the most obvious one, the one that people can throw out stats and they can say, oh my gosh, this is bad, this is awful, this is terrible compared to before. Let's talk about illegal aliens. Let's talk about the border. Let's talk about deportations. Now, some people, I'm one of those, I think that we haven't done enough. I think that more needs to be done. I wish that we would crack down harder on, for example, the ICE protesters out there. I think we should be cracking down harder and finding, locating, and then deporting far more illegal aliens than we have. But nobody can sit here and say, oh, well, it was so much better under Biden. The numbers are just you look at the statistics. Look at the statistics. The Biden numbers. No, the Biden numbers were horrible. The border was essentially open under Biden. But now we're faced with a different Democrat problem. That's being the protection of illegal aliens by sanctuary cities, Democrat governors, Democrat mayors. For whatever reason, there's this strange disconnect between reality on the ground and the narrative. And I say for whatever reason because it's one of those ones where this one should be obvious. We shouldn't have to continuously try to alert people about the truth. But apparently we do, because there's still so many on the left, and unfortunately a lot on the right, that think that, sanctuary city is a protection for illegal aliens. No, it's a protection for criminals. That's it. It's not like I'm a legal alien. I've done nothing wrong, and it's a good thing I'm in a sanctuary city, because otherwise, no, it does nothing to protect that person. The person whose only crime is that they came into America illegally, that person gets zero benefit from being in a sanctuary city. As a matter of fact, in many cases, their lives are harder as a result. Why? Because they're the members of their own community, their own neighbors who are criminals are being released back out into the streets to protect them from deportation, to protect them from ICE. So the quote-unquote law-abiding illegal aliens are the ones that are getting hurt the most, or even U.S. citizens that are living in or near these communities. They're getting hurt by the sanctuary city policies. The only ones that benefit from sanctuary city policies are the criminals. It makes absolutely no sense. And we're not talking about, oh my gosh, we got to protect this guy, this illegal alien who he just got busted jaywalking, and ICE is going to deport him. So let's protect him. No, it's far worse than that, as Tom Homan highlighted recently.
City policies, the dangerous policies of these sanctuary, states, sanctuary cities. Look, she was complicit in the murder of 3 people. And they didn't honor or detain her, release her back to the street. Like I say it again, President Trump has promised the American people he's going to make this country safe again. And one of the ways he's going to do that is remove illegal aliens or public safety threats. So ICE is going to continue to do their job. But let's be clear, it makes it less efficient. It makes it harder to do that job. We have local law enforcement that won't help us. And it's not the police officers in Chicago. Last time I was up to do an operation, I had numerous Chicago police officers come up and thank us for doing what we're doing. It's the politicians. It's Mayor Johnson. It's Governor Pritzker that doesn't want. They rather see public safety at risk than give President Trump what they think a win by decreasing crime in their cities. It's ridiculous.
Well, we're really getting a view, Tom.
Yeah. Tom Homan. I think he needs to be out there a lot more than he is. I would promote him in a heartbeat if I could, if I had that power. I forgot to set this up. Let me get this set up real quick so that you guys can see my screen. There we go. Oopsie. All right, got that set up. We've got this over there. This is yeah, you can read through it. It's a pretty long article, but I want to focus on the border security aspect of it. This is the most secure the border has been in at least half a century, some would say longer. Start where the contrast is most brutal. We're talking about President Trump's accomplishments. For years, Americans were told the border could not be controlled, that the crossings were a force of nature, that anyone promising to stop them was selling fantasy. You guys remember that? Remember, oh, we need to have legislation for this. We got to get legislation. Both Obama and Biden repeated that multiple times. And, of course, we didn't get legislation for it. And yet here we are. Then the fantasy arrived. The Department of Homeland Security has now recorded 12 consecutive months of zero releases at the border. That didn't require legislation. That required just, I don't know, abiding by the law, enforcing the law that was already on the books. With Southwest apprehensions running more than 90% below the Biden-era average. The Census Bureau went further, confirming that the country posted net negative migration for the first time in at least 50 years, with rates falling in every single metropolitan area. Illegal crossings sit at their lowest level since the 1970s. Add to that more than 600,000 deportations. It's actually, I think, 900,000 was the last number I heard. And roughly 2 million self-deportations. And you have the single largest reversal of immigration policy in living memory. Call it many things, but do not call it nothing. Yay. Go Team Trump. Because that's something that I would think back. Think back to 2015, okay? Think back to just shortly after the escalator, right? And President Trump starts talking about, those murderers that are Mexicans and this, that, and I mean, the Republican Party was apoplectic. Oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that. We can't say those things in the Republican Party. We gotta be kinder and gentler. We gotta reach out, and we gotta. No, we don't. We need to just deport illegal aliens. That's what we should do. We need to stop them from coming over. Okay, we need to fix the immigration system itself. There's still a lot of work to do. There's so much work to do, and yes, a lot of it is going to require legislation, which is why, reason number 57, why I am just so angry with the feckless GOP in the Senate, and to some extent the House, but at least the House tries to do its job. The Senate doesn't even try. The Senate just doesn't even try. And just as a quick note, because before we go any further, there's Chuck Schumer over the weekend. He was saying that if the Save America Act were to pass, that 25 million people would lose their rights to vote. Okay, well, who would those 25 million people be? Chuck? Yeah. I think we all know the answer to that. The fact that they're still, by the way, and this is a message to John Thune, who I know his team watches the show. A message to John Thune. You say that you just don't have the numbers, you don't have the math, you can't pass the Save America Act. I guarantee you this, if that were true, if it were true that the Save America Act absolutely positively cannot pass, then Chuck Schumer and his friends and fellow Democrats would not be still talking about it every single weekend. They don't talk about it because it's popular. It's an 80-20 issue. They don't want to have to talk about it. They don't want to have to fight it. But they do have to fight it because they know that if Thune were ever forced to do his job as Senate Majority Leader, that he could get it passed. Chuck Schumer knows that. Every other member of the Senate knows that. John Thune knows that. But John Thune is part of the uniparty swamp. He's the Republican defender of the swamp. And that's why he tries so hard to talk about anything other than the Save America Act. J.D. Vance understands Democrats very well. He was one. He was raised by one, at least. Two. And as such, he has his own perspectives on the impacts of illegal aliens and what they're doing to the working class here in America.
Have learned from the 2024 election is to lean into the most radical fringes of their party. I mean, you guys know this. I was raised by patriotic, Christian, blue-collar Democrats who loved this country, but they weren't Republicans. But I feel, unfortunately, that those patriotic, blue-collar Democrats, they increasingly don't have a place in that party anymore, at least among the elected senior leadership ranks. The other thing I'll say about this is I always find it interesting when socialists tell me that they really stand up for working people and they want to protect working people, but they want to abolish ICE. And so what does that mean? That means a flood of low-wage immigrants coming into this country, competing for wages against the working people, black, white, and brown of the United States of America. You do not care about working people if you refuse to enforce the border. Stop pretending that you do.
Yeah, they love to talk about class, and they love to talk about working class. Of course, people who actually know people who work don't call them the working class. They call them, as you just did, workers, but they've never met a worker if they think that their platform is supported by them. But meanwhile, of course, as the Democrat Party goes crazy.
Yeah. Sometimes those who don't know, I'm not a huge fan of Fox. I know there's some patriotic people over at Fox, but Fox corporate, Fox producers, many of the Fox hosts are just, they really are on the side of the enemy. They just, controlled opposition, if you will. That's what we got to face on a regular basis. But I think that this is the easy one, okay? If you're sitting there thinking, no, this isn't a victory for President Trump. President Trump has not done anything to close the border. He has not done anything for deportations. The illegal alien problem is just as bad, if not worse today than it was before under Joe Biden. Then you're an idiot, and just stop watching. Stop listening, okay? That's the one. The others we can debate. That's one you can't debate. The border is more secure today than it was before. Some would say the border is more secure today than it ever has been, considering the technology, considering everything that we have to secure the border. That doesn't mean it's perfect. I've already voiced my perspectives on how we need more deportations, more border security. I still want the damn wall built on both sides, by the way. I want a Canadian wall. I want a Mexican wall. If Mexico pays for it, great. But if not, I don't care. I still want the wall. I want a lot more done. But you can't tell me that this hasn't been a huge win for President Trump. It's that time. Okay, it really is getting to be that time of the history of the world where it does behoove us to start stockpiling food. Yes, I get it. It was a lot easier to justify it during the Biden years, but even now, with what's happening across the globe, what's happening with the economy, what's happening with food, it behooves us to stockpile our long-term storage food. My good friends over at Heaven's Harvest, it's a Christian company, if you couldn't tell, they have not just the ideological, religious, philosophical backing behind them. They also happen to have the best food out there. By far. I mean, it's not even close. The quality of their food, they use heirloom seeds. It's all American. They get their food, they grow their food out there in Georgia. So they're not importing from China or any place like that, like the vast majority of these survival food companies do. And it's good. I mean, it really is good. 25 years shelf life. You can get buckets. You can get heirloom seeds of your own, which I do recommend. You can get the number 10 cans. There's all sorts of options out there. MREs, if you're into those, MREs can be great for certain circumstances. So yeah, check them out. Go to jdrucker.com/food, jdrucker.com/food, and see what Heaven's Harvest can do for you. Oh, and you also be sure to use promo code Patriot. Almost forgot about that. 15% off. Not bad. Not bad. I'm just saying. Not bad. jdrucker.com/food. As Eric Gray rightly noted, we do need to concentrate on Islam. Islam is an issue. It's not just a border issue. It's an internalized issue. It's here. Okay, it's here. Period. We have a problem with Islamists. Now, that's not an attack on every Muslim. I'm not attacking individual Muslims. I've had friends that are Muslims. This is about the Islamists. This is about Sharia law. This is about the Red-Green Alliance that got my khakis so chapped last week that I had to cut the show off early. And we are going to be talking about it later in the week. But again, I wanted to make sure that today's show wasn't just doom and gloom. Because here's the thing, and this is unfortunate for me to have to say, but the problem with Islamists, the problem with the Marxists, this Red-Green Alliance that we're seeing forming here in the United States, it is here. It's not forming as in, we got to worry about it in the next decade or two. No, it's here. We need to worry about it immediately. And I will be talking about it more later this week. But again, after basically a week of oh bother, Eeyore, I thought, you know what, let's focus on the positives today, man, because there really is. We are blessed still as a nation, and we need to appreciate that blessing, and we need to come to the defense of our commander-in-chief, who is doing a fine job. Is it perfect? By gosh, no. Okay, I have complaints for President Trump literally every single day. I want to be clear about that. This isn't like, oh my gosh, President Trump can do no wrong. No, it's perfect. No, it's not like that. That's not how I am. I call balls and strikes. Problem is that everybody's calling everything a strike right now. It's like just a bit outside. A strike. What? No, that's not a strike at all. And there's a lot of good, solid things that are happening. So we're focusing on that today. Be sure to give me a rumble. Rumble up. Okay, our goal here is to get to 10,000 rumbles before the end of the day. Okay, I'll take 200. If we can get to 200, I'll be very happy. Let's be realistic here. But yeah, it isn't so bad. Come on. And there is another area outside of illegal immigration that we've seen some great progress. It's not perfect. And again, he's having to fight the Democrats. Crime in America is down. Violent crime in America is down. Even in blue cities, it's down. This is something that I just, there are times when they being the legacy media in particular, but also the Democrats, the uniparty swamp, the rhinos, they can point to, technically speaking, this, that, or the other. They can do and say whatever they want, and they can take credit when, crime is down, or they can throw the blame elsewhere. There was a story, I don't have it on the show, but there was a story over the weekend about how apparently they're complaining in Oakland because the glass repair companies are struggling because there's fewer car break-ins. And the story wasn't about the reduction in crime. The story was about these poor glass repair companies that are struggling because of, it's like, just saying, with President Trump reducing crime the way that he has, think about those glass repair companies. Now look, I'm not trying to rip on anybody's business, okay? Like if they have the right to do whatever they want to do to make money legally. But I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh my gosh, we need more crime so that the glass repair companies can do better. That's the mentality that we're facing, folks. That's why I do this show, is to fight the stupidity. It's not just about the things that are a lot less obvious, and I do try to focus on those things that are a lot less obvious. Sometimes there's the no-brainers that we just got to highlight because they really are idiots. But speaking of San Francisco, there has been obviously this reduction in crime that we're seeing, but there's also a concern, and this is that slippery slope. People always talk about slippery slopes. Well, this one, I rarely mention a slippery slope because usually when people say something's a slippery slope, it's not. And try saying slippery slope 6 times fast. You can't do it. Try it. Go ahead. I'll wait. Slippery slope, slippery. No, okay, I can't do it. Maybe you can do it. But either way, I don't talk about slippery slopes very often. This one is. Okay, the reduction, fighting crime is always, you're always just on the verge of taking it too far and turning us into a police state. And part of the police state that concerns me the most with current technology, the way that it's growing, is the potential for the surveillance state. And when I say potential, it's here. It's just not as bad as it is in China, for example. We are already engaged in the surveillance state. I mean, even just with doorbell ring cameras, that in and of itself is a perfect example of, oh my gosh, people, this is great for stopping crime. And I'm not going to disagree. I'm not going to say, oh, we should ban ring cameras. But it is kind of concerning when you think about it. When you look at not just the ring cameras, but the traffic cameras. They say they're traffic cameras. Okay, what they are is they're license plate reading tracking systems. They're not just to, oh, look, somebody is speeding through a yellow light. Let's get their license plate so that we can send them a bill, send them a ticket. That's the predicate, but that's not the reason for them. This is about crime. So you got three different tiers, right? You got the bottom tier, which is these are just traffic cams so that we can, make the road safer. And then you've got the secondary tier, which is what they tell local politicians, police, law enforcement. They say this is really about being able to collect and generate evidence to get convictions in crimes and to be able to find and track criminals. But then you've got the higher level, where the globalist elite cabal rest, where the deep state is most interested in this. And that's in ubiquitous, constant, never ceasing surveillance of the population. Crime, no crime, doesn't matter. They want to know who you are. They want to know where you are. They want to know where you're going. They want to be able to collect all of this stuff. And they know that once we get into quantum computing, which is big announcements today from the White House about quantum computing, once we get into artificial general intelligence, which many say is already here, just hasn't been rolled out to the public. Once we get into artificial superintelligence, all of a sudden, all of this data that they're collecting that seems like maybe gibberish to us today suddenly becomes a way to monitor literally everything. Literally everything, everyone. It's not just about license plate recognition, it's about facial recognition that they can always take and impose after the fact. You might say, but these cameras, they're not like the Chinese cameras that they have facial recognition. That's naive. A camera's a camera. You apply the last 30 years of surveillance, you apply a proper AGI or even ASI into that, and now you have full-blown facial recognition, even for cameras that weren't necessarily about that. It is the slippery slope. And they're starting to notice it. When we say it's coming, no. It's already here.
Developing story this morning, stunning revelation from San Francisco's police chief, putting the spotlight on the city's license plate cameras. Now, this all brings up a reoccurring question. Who else has access to that data outside of local police?
Today in the Bay, Ginger Conejero-Sam joins us live in San Francisco this morning. And the police chief, what is he saying?
Yeah, good morning, Laura and Marcus. Police Chief Derek Liu made the announcement at a recent police commission meeting. He says that a recent audit uncovered activity that violates California law. Now, the police chief said the city's license plate cameras were improperly accessed hundreds of times by Western State Information Network. That was done on behalf of federal and out-of-state law enforcement agencies, which include the DEA, the ATF, as well as state agencies in Oregon and Washington. Now, that activity is illegal because California prohibits sharing data with agencies outside the state. Chief Liu says that the audit did not find any inquiries related to federal immigration enforcement and that no federal or out-of-state agencies have ever had direct access to the flock system. Now, following the audit findings, SFPD says it immediately cut off Western State Information Network and its access to the city's flock data. In a statement, Flock, who manages the system, said in part this did not occur due to a software issue, platform problem, or any failure within the Flock system. Meanwhile, here's San Francisco DA Brooke Jenkins speaking to how the cameras have benefited the historic lows in the city's crime data.
We have taken the necessary steps to prevent it from happening in the future. That is what is important here. We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We cannot say that now we're not going to use the technology because of what happened in the past. But this is a tool that has gravely assisted this city in holding perpetrators of crime accountable.
Now, San Francisco has more than 400 license plate reading cameras across the city. And as the DA spoke to, the city has benefited significantly from this technology. However, other cities have reconsidered or even terminated their flock systems or their license plate reading cameras because there has also been illegal access to their data. So we'll see where San Francisco plans to move forward after this was found. Guys, sending it back to you.
Yeah, we'll continue to watch. Good thing they caught it early. All right, Ginger Conner-Harris in the city this morning for us. Thank you, Ginger.
For those that don't know, the Western States Information Network is a regional intelligence sharing hub on behalf of federal agencies like these here and out-of-state agencies in these states, in addition to some more. So it's illegal in California, but it's actually legal to share this data in a lot of other states, and I'll get into that. But before the Democrats and liberals start going, oh, this is used to get illegals, no, none of the queries were related to federal immigration enforcement. So that just kills that conspiracy right there. But let's go ahead and take a look. Now, keep in mind that all these agencies and states are accessing license plate readers. And if they can access the license plate readers, then they can access a lot more of the cameras. Some of them even follow people around. They can track your movements and all that other kind of stuff. But let's just see, how many states would this have been legal in? So according to this, 40 or more states out of 50 do not have these strict information sharing laws like California does. So it could be as many as 40 plus states can share your data with other states or federal agencies. This is a network of mass surveillance, and it's being established right now before our eyes. This is the police state. This is what we've all been worried about, and it's happening right now.
It's happening, and here's the thing. Whether there's a California law or not, as a California resident myself, I can tell you that the laws are very bendable depending upon who's doing what. And it's not just about having the law, it's about enforcement. And clearly, the law was in place, and yet here it was, here in San Francisco. They were, oh, well, we didn't know. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's been a very big benefit. They sell it, sell it, sell it, sell it, sell it. This is dangerous, period. And if you think, well, it doesn't affect me, you're wrong. It does affect you. Surveillance of any sort on the law-abiding population is bad. Surveillance of any sort without a warrant based upon the crime being committed is wrong. You don't have to read 1984 to realize we're there. They're just sugarcoating it for us. Now, this is one of those things where, like I said, I call balls and strikes. And this is a system that even President Trump has been in favor of. He is a black and white guy when it comes to stuff like this. And when there's a gray area, he needs to be informed. Now, here's the good part. Here's the best part, arguably the best part about President Trump. And let me explain this with a historical commitment to it. Way back in shortly after the GOP primaries, shortly after President Trump was, at the time, candidate Trump was officially nominated as the Republican candidate for president. He went on with Sean Hannity, and they had this town hall. And this was back then, I know it's been a while, but a decade ago, we had what was called the softening, okay? This was about August, I believe, of 2016. The softening, where President Trump was like, well, maybe we don't have to deport everybody. And Sean Hannity was really helping him sell this idea, pushing it. And they went out there, and they had this town hall, and they were like, they were taking turns basically trying to convince the audience that, do we really want to deport even the ones that are paying taxes? And the audience is like, yes, we do. And shortly after that, President Trump's quote-unquote softening, which lasted about a week and a half, got reversed. He's like, you know what? Yeah, let's just deport them all. Yeah, let's just deport them all. He listens to us. And this is one of those scenarios, one of those instances where, sure, do we want to fight crime? You betcha. Do we want to fight crime with mass surveillance of the population? Absolutely, positively not. No way. The data is already being accumulated, and it will be used against us today. It will be used against us even more tomorrow, when again we have better technology. It's not like these videos, the surveillance is static and it cannot be later improved upon, enhanced, re-evaluated with better technology. It will be. And let's even take away the current future where, okay, well, so today's data will be used against us in the future. We're still heading in that direction. And having the infrastructure for all of this in place, not a good thing. President Trump, Stephen Miller, I would say the Republican legislature, but I'm not very confident about that. They need to be made aware. But here's where it really gets, I guess, important. And as I said, in California, a law is only as good as it's enforced, and it's very rarely enforced unless it benefits the Democrats. That's not the case in other states. And if you live in other states, you need to be talking to your state legislators. You need to be talking to your sheriffs. You need to be telling them that, look, the allure of this type of surveillance can be very good. Sure, it'll make the numbers better. Will it make people, quote unquote, safer? In the interim, sure, it might, and it probably will in some cases. But what is the trade-off? What is the trade-off for freedom? We need to be having this conversation now. We should have had this conversation half a decade ago, but we need to be having this conversation now. And then back to my premise from before with the getting more food. It's not a. I don't want to be a fearmonger, but by golly, I can tell you this. If and when we have the resources to be able to get our bunker or homestead or whatever out in Montana or Idaho or wherever, we will, because I don't want to be in the city anymore. You know, I've lived in both sides. I've lived in New York and Southern California. I've lived in West Virginia and Oklahoma, and I can tell you, I felt a lot safer in West Virginia and Oklahoma than I did in California or New York City. And it's not just about the crime either. It's just about the governance. It's about the surveillance. It's about the police state that's burgeoning all around us. With that said, it has been a historic drop in crime, and that's my hit on President Trump, and it's minor because again, this isn't his problem, but I really wish that he would address it, and I really, really, really wish he would stop promoting the possibility of this being a benefit, because it's not. It's not a benefit to Americans, not in the long run, not even in the short run. With that said, we have had an historic collapse in crime. Now, if we're being honest, the reduction in homicides actually started in 2023. But if we're being even more honest, that was because we had such a spike from the COVID days. COVID, the lockdowns and all that stuff, that generated a spike in homicides. And so it did start going down in 2023, but we didn't get historic until President Trump and his crime-fighting ways were back in office. Notice, though, according to the article that we have over at jdrucker.com, notice, though, what the critics do with the facts. The Nonpartisan Council on Criminal Justice projects that 2025 will show the largest single-year drop in the homicide rate on record and the lowest rate since 1900. Had murders spiked on his watch, does anyone believe the same commentators would have spent the year insisting that presidents have no influence on crime? They keep saying this. It's, the president can't do anything about crime. Look at what's happened in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. The crime has diminished in insane levels. He's made the offer in Chicago. Chicago had their Juneteenth weekend celebration of mass death. I think, was there like 40 shootings in Chicago over the weekend? President Trump does know what to do, and he has been doing everything he can from a federal level to fix our crime issue. here in the United States. There's only so much you can do, though. But one thing that we can do is we do need to hold our leaders accountable. And that means mayors. And yes, if you live in Chicago, by golly, figure out how to wake the people up. Every time we think, oh, they're waking up, it's just like in LA. Oh, they're waking up in New York. They're waking up. They're not. They need to be shaken awake because they have spent decades putting Democrats in office. And it doesn't matter how bad it gets. They just keep doing it. We need to continue to, we can't give up on them. I guess we could. Maybe we should. I'm not ready to give up on them. I still pray for the big cities. That's where the most people are. I pray that they will wake up, come to their senses. When you have people like Brandon Johnson, who I would say he's one of the 10 worst. Yeah, a lot of people say he might be the worst mayor in America. I would say that Zohran Mamdani is already making his case for that. We're seeing the results of that in New York City. I would say that Katie Wilson in Seattle probably is the worst. Karen Bass, LA, might be the worst. Take away the fire, and she still might be the worst. So, and there's new fire that's out here. Goodness. But Brandon Johnson, the thing that he doesn't do a whole lot bad, to be clear. He doesn't do a whole lot of anything. He's sort of like a puppet. But when he says things to rile people up, that's where he really demonstrates how awful he is. And recently, he blamed the murders that have been happening across Chicago, across the city, including during this Juneteenth weekend. He blamed those murders on Richard Nixon.
So, yeah, it is personal. Black death has been unfortunately accepted in this country for a very long time. We had a chance 60 years ago to get at the root causes, and people mocked President Johnson. And we ended up with Richard Nixon. I'm going to work hard every day to transform this city. That's what it takes to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago. I need everybody to step up.
I've got nothing. I don't know what to say to that. Richard Nixon? Really? That's the problem with Chicago? I dare you to try to make this up. But we are starting to see more and more the Department of Justice making moves that I think are truly beneficial to slowing and stopping crime. The hard part that we're faced with isn't just the actual crimes themselves. I'm not just talking about the murderers and the rapists, the thieves, the whatever. I'm talking about the people that have emerged, that are going out of their way. Really, you can go all the way back to the George Floyd riots, of course. The people that are not committing crimes for themselves. They're committing crimes for the sake of protecting criminals. And if you guys recall, let me pull it up here real quick. If you can see on the screen, that lady. You remember her? It's about 5 months ago. Yeah, she was kicking and spitting on cops and ICE agents, and she was just going crazy. And she was smiling. She was like a lunatic, right? I'm not going to play the video. I don't have the video. But if you recall, if you can see the scene on the screen, immediately after that, like as they're taking her over to the car, she gets slammed down, right? And I thought, ooh, that was pretty harsh. I wonder if they're going to be able to use that to get her out of it. Nope. She's going to jail, and she could be going to jail for a long time. According to this article that we have over at Conservative Playlist, anti-ICE activist who called federal officers Nazis now faces up to 2 decades in prison. Her name was Jennifer, or still is, Jennifer Susan Cruz. She spent a January afternoon hurling the word Nazi at officers enforcing federal immigration law in Jacksonville. This week, she learned what that performance is going to cost her, and the bill runs as high as 20 years in federal prison. The 41-year-old Jacksonville woman pleaded guilty on June 18th to assaulting officers conducting an immigration operation, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Florida. A sentencing date has not been set, but the maximum exposure on the charge is 2 decades behind bars. The record laid out by federal prosecutors leaves little room for the sympathetic framing that the activist class prefers. On January 13th, federal immigration officers assisted by the Florida Highway Patrol were working in Jacksonville to locate and arrest illegal aliens present in the country. They ended up finding a couple of illegal aliens, pulled them over, and she's recording all this in her car, and she goes in, and they go to stop her, not because she's recording, but because she's using her phone in her vehicle, which is illegal. Okay? She's operating her vehicle, she's driving, she's recording, and that's against the law, right? So they go to confront her about this, and she starts swinging and kicking and spitting and hurling out, calling them all Nazis. She did not get arrested for recording the police. She did not get arrested for blocking the intersections or anything like that. She got arrested for what she did after the fact. She punched a cop in the face. She tried kicking other cops. She ended up hurting one of their hands, I think, with one of her kicks. And that's why she's going to jail. And we need more of this. More. Give me more. I want more of these people arrested. Somebody goes and blocks a roadway for whatever cause they have, they should be arrested. But in LA over the weekend, there was a street takeover. So it wasn't even for like a cause or anything like that. It was for child stupidity. A street takeover. There was an emergency, there was an ambulance that was blocked as a result of the street takeover. This ambulance with its lights on was delayed for several minutes, which could cost a life, because of this street takeover in this affluent neighborhood in Los Angeles. In LAPD, they arrested exactly 0 people as a result. That makes no sense. Of course they're going to keep having these stupid street takeovers if there's no risk of accountability. I showed last week the video. Gosh, I don't remember where it's from. I think it was Florida. Could have been somewhere else. But where they're actually taking the vehicles that they impound and they're destroying them. Okay? Kid wants to participate in the street takeover, better go tell daddy that your souped up Subaru is going to be demolished as a result. We need more of that. We need more arrests. We need people like this lady blocking and attacking ICE and law enforcement. She needs to go to jail for a long time. They're going to keep subverting the law as long as they're able to without consequences. So we need consequences. I'm adamantly and vehemently opposed to the surveillance state, to the police state. I don't want law-abiding citizens to be tracked at all. But you start breaking the law, and the law should be coming down on you. That's how America can work. That's what President Trump is trying to reinstill here in the United States of America. I spent years in the gold and silver industry. I left because, well, it's not a good industry. I'll just flat out come out and say it. It's pretty deceptive. It's up there with some of the scams, and while I did work for very good companies relative to others, they were still promoting the idea of numismatic coins or collectible coins or special coins, specially minted coins, yada yada yada. Reality is that if I were recommending, and I am recommending to friends and relatives, I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm not recommending to you, but if I'm recommending to friends, relatives, I tell them bullion is the way to go. Just straight up bullion. Get rounds, put rounds in your safe, get IRA qualified bullion to back your retirement. Don't mess with the higher priced numismatics or whatever. This is why I strongly recommend talking to my good friend Ira, who only deals with those. He will sell numismatics if somebody absolutely positively demands it. It's not like he can't sell them, but he understands. He's been in the business for many decades, longer than I have, and he understands even better than me how they just don't benefit you. Whereas straight up bullion, based upon the weight and the quality, that's it. Get as much gold and silver for as little money as possible, and you can do that by going to jdrucker.com/gold, jdrucker.com/gold. This is the only guy that I work with now. I've worked with some good companies out there, but even those good companies were still selling numismatics, and I just can't do it anymore. So check out Ira, see what he can do for you. Go to jdrucker.com/gold. This next story cracks me up because, again, this is Monty Python. Now, the most ludicrous movie ever made was Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And the most ludicrous scene from that movie, I wish I could play it. I don't want to risk getting a copyright strike or whatever, but it is hilarious. And I'm going to pull it up on the screen. It does, the King Arthur is going along with his fake horse and the guy behind him clapping, which itself is ludicrous. But then he comes along to the Black Knight, who's dispatched with some other knight, stabbed him through the eyes, and now he's fighting King Arthur, and King Arthur chops off all of his limbs, and the Black Knight still, you're a coward, still screaming at him as he's got no limbs. And Arthur says, we'll call it a draw. That was probably the best punchline in the whole thing. But the reason I bring it up is because a lot of these people that are out there on the left and the right are saying that Iran is they won. They're this memorandum of understanding and the burgeoning peace deal that's coming from it, that it's, oh my gosh, they totally owned us and this is so bad. It's not. It's bad for them. I'm going to read a little bit from this article. Anyone who has seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail remembers the Black Knight. He guards a tiny bridge, refuses to let King Arthur pass, and loses the duel badly. Arthur lops off one arm, then the other, then both legs, until the knight is limbless torso bleeding into the dirt. And still, he bellows that the field is his. "'Tis but a scratch," he says after losing one arm. "Just a flesh wound," he says after losing another. "I'll bite your legs off," the limbless knight says. That sketch is the most honest portrait we have of the Islamic Republic of Iran as of right now. The regime that spent 4 decades promising to wipe Israel off the map and drive America from the region has been reduced to a stump, and it cannot stop announcing its triumph. The arithmetic is not close. In the opening hours of the Operation Epic Fury on February 28th, America and Israeli forces took out the Ayatollah, took out many of his leaders, continued forth. By mid-March, Pete Hegseth was saying that they were functionally defeated. Its navy was at the bottom of the Persian Gulf, its missile production lines raised, and its air defenses gone by the time the ceasefire was discussed. Hegseth had actually upgraded the verdict to a defense base completely destroyed with what little survived buried in bunkers. Missile launchers were down 90%, drone attacks down 95%. That is not the box score of a winner. But here's the thing. They were already hurting even before. Before the war started, before February 28th, they were in the midst of an economic collapse. And they are still in the midst of the same economic collapse. This is a nation that their military is decimated, their economy is destroyed, their leadership is completely revamped. They're on to the 4th and 5th stringers now, as far as their leadership, and yet they're still claiming victory. They're still pretending like they're winning. Now, I hope and pray that President Trump does not let his pride get in the way. This is one of those scenarios where, 9 times out of 10, when in foreign affairs, actually more than that, we'll call it 98 times out of 100, in foreign affairs, you want somebody like a President Trump who's going to be bold, who's going to be aggressive, who's going to put everybody in their place. We are the United States of America. In this particular case, I almost hope, and we'll see how it plays out, but in a way, I'm actually very happy that it's J.D. Vance over there, because this is one of those scenarios where, okay, call it a draw, as King Arthur did in Monty Python. Let them pretend like they're okay, because if their pride, their ego, their stupidity gets in the way and prompts them to disregard the agreement, then that sucks. That sucks for everybody involved. Where it's already precarious. Like I said, I don't give it much of a chance of succeeding in the long term. And by long term, I'm not even talking like years. I'm talking about weeks. I don't think they can go the next 59 days without breaking the agreement. I hope they do, though, or I hope that they're able to go at least long enough for things to settle down. I'd love for them to go long enough for us to have an election. Okay, it'd be great if this peace can sustain until after the election, at the very least. But I'm not confident that it will. Either way, they can't sit there and pretend like they got the upper hand, except we're just going to have to sort of let them. I know that sucks. I know that we want them to acknowledge that they're defeated, but that's not in their DNA. Anyone who understands the Shiites, anyone who understands the 12er mentality that permeates across the IRGC and within the leadership, the mullahs in Iran, you'll understand that their religious belief combined with their political ideology makes it impossible for them to ever admit defeat. Like, it's not just, well, they're delusional. It's not about delusion. I mean, it is to some extent. But it's really more about their quote-unquote faith, which is demonic, driving them to always push forward even when they have nothing left, even when their military is decimated, even when their economy is so gone that they couldn't survive without this deal. If, let's say, you know what, America's just going to walk away, everybody's going to walk away, leave Iran to do what Iran's going to do, they crumble, they die, okay, as a nation. They have to have help. And you might say, well, why would we help them? Well, there's 90 million people who didn't do anything wrong. A good chunk of those people are not Muslims. They're not Shiites. They're just remnants of the Persian people. And so if we were to just walk away, then they're the ones that are going to suffer. You might say, well, but if, America first, okay, yeah, I am. Totally America first. I don't want to give them a penny. But it does behoove those in the region to help to invest into and rebuild Iran. So Iran has some money, fine, release it. Others in the region want to invest into Iran, help to rebuild it, fine. I don't want our tax dollars going there. And people will say, you got, especially a lot of the war hawks out there saying, they shouldn't get a penny. Look, they're beaten. They're devastated. And is it a mistake to let that government get built back up? You betcha it is. What other option do we have other than boots on the ground? This is where I always, a lot of people have this mentality of, well, we got to keep going. The bombings did everything that they were supposed to do except for initiate regime change. The people of Iran did everything they were supposed to do except for a coup. And some will say, many will say, I think anybody who understands the region understands that they don't have guns. They might have 90,000 people, or 90 million people, sorry, but they don't have weapons. And plus the IRGC itself, the leadership itself, is spread out across a very, very large nation. And they're fortified. They're bunkered. They're 80 floors, 80 levels below the ground. There's nothing the people can do. At least I hope that's the case. Because if that's not the case, if there is a possibility that if they just got together and engaged in a revolution, they could win, then why haven't they? I have to go back to the notion that we saw before the invasion that these people were willing to die to fight for their country. 40,000 of them did. So I can't, it doesn't jibe in my head other than the notion that they just can't. They just can't do it. So the only other option be send in the Marines, and that's non-starter. So there is no elegant solution to this. There is no America First solution other than to back away, hope they do well, and if they don't, then bomb the crap out of them again. I wish there was an easy answer. I'm not seeing it. President Trump had noted back in March, he noted, look, we tried. We tried to arm the people. I don't know. They were trying to use the Kurds, if I recall, perhaps the Peshmerga, and the guns, for whatever reason, just never made it to the people. I don't know if they were kept by the Kurds. I don't know if the confiscated by the IRGC. It's kind of a black hole as far as information coming out of Iran. The best move that the Iranian government, the regime, did was to cut off communications, cut off the internet. That was, unfortunately, for the people of Iran, that was very effective. Kept us in the dark in many ways. I think a lot of us thought, well, you got the CIA and Mossad both in Iran. They should be able to get this revolution started. It just never did. So I don't know what went wrong. I don't know if it was poor planning, poor execution, unforeseen circumstances, or if it really was just that we hit them with everything we could. We took out as many leaders as we could, and then they hunkered down somewhere, and now we can't get to them. I don't know the situation. I just know that based upon information available to us, the current status is the best case scenario. Because otherwise it's either boots on the ground or let the people die. This seems to be, unfortunately, what's best for the Iranian people, which isn't good, because there's already reports that the executions have started back up, or some have said they never stopped. Again, black hole, informational black hole. We don't know what we don't know, and that's a very, very sad situation, sad scenario for the Iranian people. They did apparently still try to attack us. It's sad that this didn't get any publicity, even from most of conservative media. Maybe more will realize it later. But I found like 3 sources out of 300 that were even talking about this. According to Maureen Dowling over at Independent Sentinel, Iranians tried to sneak IRGC terrorists into the United States. This isn't an old article, okay? This is from yesterday. As Iran pretends they are negotiating in good faith, Iran tried to sneak IRGC terrorists into the United States. They hid them in the World Cup soccer delegation. If you recall last week, the delegation was booted. Got booted from LA. They were told to go back after their first match. They were told to go back to their to Mexico City, I think, or someplace in Mexico. No, it wasn't Mexico City. Wherever their practice facilities were. And then I guess things were okay and they got invited back. I saw that they played over the weekend. I don't follow World Cup or soccer, but yeah, I thought that was weird at the time. Well, why would they get booted immediately? Well, apparently it's because they were trying to sneak terrorists into the United States under the flag of soccer. Additionally, Iranians are now coming in through the northern border. This also happened over the weekend. Their Canadian friends have helped control the influx. Most of the people pouring through the border are tied to the IRGC. Again, more and more terrorists. That was Markwayne Mullen who revealed that over the weekend on Sunday. It sounds like they need, and I don't have that video or else I'd play it for you. It sounds like they need more terror cells or leadership in the United States. It's insane that this story got, again, like no attention whatsoever. And maybe it will. We'll see. I do want the war to end. I don't see an easy way out of this. The Godfather model that I've been talking about seems to be the best case scenario. Let's give them the option, give them everything they want and need, as long as they do as they've claimed that they're willing to do by allowing inspectors in. That came out this morning, that they have said that they will allow inspectors, which of course might mean absolutely nothing. I mean, they technically allowed inspectors during the Obama years, and yet they didn't. It's a backwards leadership, a backwards nation. I feel for the people, but we shouldn't have been there. I'll just go ahead and say it. Or if we did, if let's say we should have gone in, I don't know. I wish I could just say definitively that this was the way that it could have happened, this is the way it should have happened, this is what we did right, this is what we did wrong. I do know that we can pray for the Iranian people, pray for peace, pray for the regime to either wake up or get out of the way. But otherwise, it's pretty darn depressing to me. And I said today, earlier today, we're going to keep it super positive. Of course, I had to bring up Iran. Other things that have been very positive for the Trump administration during his first 18 months. Let's go through, and you can read this article over at jdrucker.com. We talked about the border security. We talked about the crime. We did have, for those who don't recall, the largest tax cut in American history. This was the Big Beautiful Bill. The Big Beautiful Bill codified the 2017 tax cuts, and here we are. They're permanent. Imagine what would have happened with Kamala Harris. Imagine what would have happened if we didn't get the Big Beautiful Bill passed. Yes, everybody's taxes would have gone up. Instead, this was one of, if not the best tax year for many, many of us. The percentage of tax that we had to pay greatly reduced. Many people got more refunds than they've ever gotten in their lives. That's a positive, and that should be highlighted. Energy, of course. We are now not just energy independent, we're energy dominant. Energy is the input hiding inside every other price, from groceries to freight to the power bill. American crude production reached a record of roughly 13.6 million barrels per day, the highest annual level the country has ever produced. Permitting timelines that once ran years were compressed dramatically. Advancing nuclear projects that were greenlit, and the war on domestic production gave way to a policy of expanding it. Out here in California, everybody hates oil except when we have to import it. California has a lot of oil, and yet it's the only state that has to import oil from the Middle East. Make it traverse all those thousands of miles just so that Gavin Newsom and his cronies can say, oh, we're stopping that oil. They're not. They're just redirecting it in an idiotic, just an absolutely stupendously retarded way. We're not going to produce the oil. We're just going to import it, which will be worse for the environment. Idiots. A country that produces more of its own energy is a country with a thicker cushion against the kind of supply shocks that rattle every household budget. We got the hostages home. We got Maduro behind bars. Government size is getting, I know the article says cut down to size. It's not, okay? If we were getting cut down to size, we would eliminate the federal government, about 95% of it, and very few people would even notice, except for government employees, of course. But we could do it, and we could return the power back to the states, the cities, and the individuals where the power belongs. Instead, we still have a gargantuan federal government, but at the very least, it is growing more slowly, we'll say, under President Trump. We can say what we will about the economy and affordability, but it's funny. Quick note on that. Notice how the terminology changed. We used to talk about it's the economy, stupid, right? what turned from the economy into affordability, specifically because of President Trump. Because the economy itself, by most metrics, is doing very well. But the affordability, our costs, inflation, what we're spending at the gas pump, what we're spending on utility bills, what we're spending on food, what we're spending on day-to-day expenses, what we're spending on rent or mortgages, all of these things, those are going up. And so as a result, you could say that it's being compensated through employment, being compensated through the stock market, being compensated through all these other things. But the legacy media and the left have really pushed for this affordability component because they know that the vast majority of Americans, 95% or more, have really no understanding of the economy outside of how much money they have in the bank at any given moment, how much money's going in, how much money's going out, their own budgets. And that's fine. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that if we were more focused on that, maybe America would be doing better. But the economy itself, based upon standard metrics, is doing very well. And it has been doing far better under President Trump than under Joe Biden. Yeah, you can read that article over at jdrucker.com. Quick check on news. I've been wanting to look on this. Apparently, President Trump has signed some executive orders, including something about, as I noted earlier, something about quantum computing. And I really want to see what that is, but I don't have it up here. If anybody has a link, pop that in chat. I'd like to figure out what's going on with that because, like I've said many, many times, I've been saying this for years now. Quantum computing, for those who don't know, is going to be, at some point, it's going to be something that's fantastic and devastating at the same time. And once you apply quantum computing and artificial intelligence, boom, you've got full-blown AGI, maybe even artificial superintelligence. Quantum computing changes the timelines. It's not just, oh, computers are better. It takes today's supercomputers, the best computers we have, and leaves them in the dust. What would take normally other people, a very long time, other computers a very long time, even supercomputers, a task that might take them months or even years, a quantum computer can do in minutes or even seconds. And this, of course, changes the game when it comes to hacking, changes the game when it comes to artificial intelligence, the aforementioned surveillance state. Quantum computing that's the big one. It's bigger than, I don't want to say it's bigger than AI. It's the driver behind the Skynet version of artificial intelligence. We've got some really crazy AI capabilities today, but they're nothing compared to once you just think along the lines of, you got three components, okay? When it comes to AI, you've got three components. You've got, everybody talks about the data center component of it, right? You gotta have the chips, you gotta have the compute. Okay. Then there's the energy side of it. You've got to have the energy. And along with the energy comes the ability to cool it, which is where the water comes in. Okay. But you also have to have the ability, it's not just about the data storage, it's also about the data speed. And this is where the quantum computing comes into effect. Today's best chips can move so fast compared to what they were just 5 or 10 years ago. But once you start applying the qubits, the quantum computing component, now all of a sudden you need less energy to do more stuff. You need less compute. You do not need less compute, but you can do more with less compute, we'll say. And that's where we start to get into a real, true danger zone. Thank you, Demanda. Let's see what we've got here. We're going to do it live. See what they're saying. Barron's reports that Trump fast-tracks quantum computing. This is awesome. Quantum computing with new executive order. Yay! It's bad. Oh, great. I got to subscribe. I'm not going to subscribe. But we can probably extrapolate everything we need. Quantum computing received another federal endorsement on Monday as the Trump administration signed 2 executive orders fast-tracking its development. Yeah, I think that's enough. That's enough data. Montana Idaho, South Dakota, Tennessee, middle of the country. Maybe get an island off the coast of Maine. I heard they're cheap. Not trying to scare you folks. Just trying to tell you the truth. And it's not looking great. And you might think, okay, well, but President Trump has done so well with preventing disaster, which he has. But he's not going to be there forever. And it should concern you that the foundation for this combined surveillance state, police state, quantum computing state, the artificial intelligence industrial complex, everything is just going crazy. And who's going to be the next president? Will it be J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or Rand Paul or Ron DeSantis? Or will it be Gavin Newsom or Kamala Harris or AOC? Or, gosh, Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is currently like third or fourth on the list. This Tucker Carlson, who, by the way, over the weekend said that he can't support the Republican Party. After 35 years, he's not going to support the Democrats either, but he's not going to support the Republican Party. He's starting to sound more and more and more every day like a candidate. And he's amongst those who, like I said, it's not just on the left, it's also on the right. A lot of these, this woke Reich that's saying that everything's bad, everything's horrible. President Trump is destroying America. I disagree. And I've disagreed a lot with Tucker Carlson over the years, but this is one of those ones where I can now, his end game is starting to form, and we're going to see more and more of that in the future. That'll be fun. Fun stuff. All right. One more. Look, I get it. Over the last probably decade or so, everybody's heard about MyPillow. Everybody's you either love Mike Lindell, I love him, or you have a different opinion of him, so be it. But his pillows are stinking awesome, as are his slippers, as are his bed covers, and pretty much everything they have over there. All American, pro-America, America First company, of course. So, and they're hurting. They've been attacked more so, as Mike likes to say, he's been attacked more than any other man in America other than President Trump himself. And so is his company. So support them, please. Go to jdrucker.com/pillow, jdrucker.com/pillow. You can always go to mypillow.com/JDR, same destination, but either way, go there and use promo code JDR to get the best possible discount. Mike is very good at keeping all the discounts uniform, so just because you might hear about him from a bigger influencer or a bigger brand, we all get the same discounts. So using promo code JDR, you help me out, you help Mike out, you help America. Go to mypillow.com/JDR. I think I'm going to try to get Mike on the show. So I've got a few questions for the audience. And thank you all for sticking around this long. Be sure to give a rumble, thumbs up, whatever it's called. That does help us out a bunch. A few questions for you, though. And you can put your answers. I know you can always put your answers in the chat. Unfortunately, the chat doesn't sustain. I need to figure that out because you can do it on other platforms. For whatever reason, once I refresh, I can no longer access the chats. Maybe there's a way to do it. I don't know. Somebody could send me that. But a few questions. Number one, interviews or not. I'm not a fan of interviews. I'll admit it, but I'll do them if the audience wants, because I've got access to some good people. I really do. You know, Mike Lindell's running for office. I'd love to get him on the show if I'm doing interviews. John Solomon, I've had him on a few times. You know, James O'Keefe, Don Jr. I had a list that we were going to get on before when I was guest hosting for Wendy Bell. And Brock actually talked me out of it. He's like, you know what? There's no need to do guests, and which aligns perfectly with me. I'm fine with not doing guests. But if you all want guests, please let me know. And the best way to answer any of these questions, by the way, jdrucker.com/talk jdrucker.com/talk comes directly to me. So if you can get that out there, that's good. Second question is, I have some pretty strong feelings about those who are out there now trashing President Trump from the right, trashing MAGA from the right, claiming to be the new MAGA, the new right, whatever, the Tuckers of the world, the Candace Owens of the world. I've always avoided the topic, not really avoided, that's the wrong way to put it. I've never focused on it because it's obviously it's a very divisive divisive topic. But I'd love to talk about it. If you all want to hear that, I've got opinions, I got perspectives. I could definitely do that. And then, last but not least, final question for the day. What topics would you all like me to cover? I've never been a big fan of, it's just news of the day. There's better people than that, better people at that than I am. I do keep my finger on the pulse of the news, but I think the deeper analyses of some of the things that are happening in the world is really more my forte. So if there are topics that you would want me to dive into, even if it's just for a segment, it doesn't have to be a huge, do an entire show or spend a whole week talking about this, that, or the other. It could be, do a segment about Ilhan Omar's finances, or do a segment about, who's going to replace Justice Alito or Clarence Thomas. When God forbid they retire anytime soon, please keep them there for a long time. Anything, who I like for president in 2028, that's probably an important topic, right? And I do have opinions on the various so-called candidates. I know it's early, but you know what? It's still fun to talk about what we need to do for the 2026 midterms, things like that. Any topics that you guys want me to discuss, please send them to jdrucker.com/talk. Lord willing, I'll be back very soon with another episode. But in the meantime, y'all stay strong, stay safe, and God bless.